This program, while curated to help you improve your health, contains general advice and should not replace the individual advice of your medical practitioner.
What are some of the symptoms that people would need to be worried that they definitely need to get medically investigated?
There are definitely some warning signs that you want to be aware of.
What conditions is gut health related to?
Oh, the list is growing almost every day,
What would be your definition of a healer?
So a healer doesn't necessarily have to be a doctor.
What percentage of people that come to see you do you think just need to change their diet and lifestyle to get improvement?
I think a lot of people need to change their diet and lifestyle.
In life, it's normal to have ups and downs. But what do we do when we get stuck? I've always been fascinated by the healing journey. Why do some people get better while others fail to make the shift? Welcome to the Expert Series, where you'll meet 25 of the world leaders in health and wellness, discussing their passions and what it takes to make your shift.
There's an electrical feeling in the room.
I had to be a mom. It was so important to me.
I've always been a pain in the butt, and I love that.
I knew that I wanted to help people.
I'm Katherine Maslen, and this is The Shift. Hi, I'm Katherine Maslen, naturopath, author and host of The Shift. In the Expert Series, we share the insights, stories and expertise of each of our amazing experts. You might have met them on season 1 of The Shift, where we took snippets of these conversations and put them together into the series. If you haven't listened to season 1 yet, I'd recommend going back and listening to episode 1 on what it takes to make a shift in your gut health. We'll provide a link in the show notes. In this episode of The Shift, I have a real treat for you. Integrative gastroenterologist Dr. Marvin Singh. I met Dr. Marvin for the first time in San Diego, California, and I immediately connected with him. We share a lot of the same philosophies around health, and to be honest, he's really just a wonderful human being with an amazing message. Dr. Marvin is one of the few integrative gastroenterologists in the world and one of America's leading wellness concierges. He is a co-author of the textbook of Integrative Environmental Medicine, a contributor for Mind Body Green and other publications, a media personality, and an expert when it comes to the gastrointestinal tract, health and wellness. I'm going to be honest here and say that gastroenterology is actually one of my least liked specialties in the mainstream medical world. My experience in working with traditional gastroenterologists has been that they're very limited in their understanding of the gut and its role in health, including the microbiome, the role of the immune system, or even its digestive capacity. Dr. Marvin is a breath of fresh air and a powerful voice for change in his industry. For the first time, we have a board-certified gastroenterologist who puts weight on the importance of looking at the gut as a fully functioning system that's essential for health. Dr. Marvin is featured across 6 of the episodes in season 1 of The Shift, but I'm so pleased to release this extended interview for you because there is just so much information that I wanted you to know. Listen out for what causes food reactions, how you can tune into your body better, the real reasons behind reflux, and how to make your digestive system thrive. First up, I asked Marvin to introduce himself.
My name is Marvin Singh. I am an integrative gastroenterologist, and I do a little bit of everything. I do general gastroenterology, and I practice what I call wellness medicine, which is helping people optimize their health.
Where were you born?
I was born in Virginia, which is on the east coast of the United States, and I grew up in Northern Virginia most of my life. And I lived in Virginia for a large portion of my life. I went to high school and college there, and when I was in college, I went to medical school. Actually, when I was in high school, I was accepted into a guaranteed admissions program through my college. So actually from I guess, a junior in high school, I already knew I was going to go to medical school. I was accepted to a few of those programs. I chose the one in Virginia just because I have a fondness for the state and I wanted to stay. And so I was a member of the George Mason University Scholars Program, which guaranteed me admission to the Medical College of Virginia, or VCU School of Medicine in Richmond, Virginia. And at that point, I guess after having gone through medical school, I decided now's my chance to see some of the rest of the country. And so I decided not to have any limitations on where I went for my medical residency. And I went to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And I tell everyone how I ended up in San Diego for my GI training was it was -10 in Michigan the day that I left for my interview. And when the plane arrived in San Diego, it was 75 degrees, and I was like, where is this place? Where am I? This is like a paradise. I have to come here. And so I did my gastroenterology fellowship at the famous Scripps Clinic in La Jolla.
So what was your childhood like? Were you living in the city, on a farm?
I was actually born in Winchester, Virginia, so more of like the farm. We didn't live on a farm, but it was kind of more of a rural area. Now it's a much more developed area, but back, when I was born, it was kind of a very, nice rural kind of community. Then when we moved, when I was just, in first grade, we were in Vienna, which is Northern Virginia, and that's more of basically a suburban type of environment.
When did you know that you wanted to become a doctor?
It's funny because I don't really have the actual memory of it in my head, but I know that in my 6th grade graduation, the theme was hopes and dreams, and I still have this. I think I don't know if I have it or my parents have it, but we had to draw our own silhouette, and then we would write, and we had to write on the top of it, "My hopes and dreams are ... and I wrote to become a doctor. So I guess from a very early age in elementary school, I knew I wanted to be a doctor.
That's amazing. And when did you decide you wanted to be a gastroenterologist?
Oh, that was a tough decision. And that was in residency, when I was in Michigan trying to decide what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be able to help people with my mind and thinking through things and solving problems. But I also enjoy using my hands. And I knew I didn't want to be a surgeon because that was maybe going to the extreme of using their hands, and the lifestyle really didn't seem to be something that was really going to fit with my personality. And so I settled on gastroenterology as a thought. It was between that and cardiology, and I just really was fascinated with the GI tract a little bit more. And not to say the heart's not exciting. The heart is exciting. But I just, met a series of really cool gastroenterologists who kind of got me excited about the field. And I saw some procedures done and saw them in the office, and I saw how you can use both skills. And I get excited by being able to do all of that. So, I can save someone's life who's bleeding in the hospital 1 minute and then talk to them about the microbiome in another minute. It's kind of cool.
What is a gastroenterologist?
So a gastroenterologist is someone who has done their general training in internal medicine and then done some subspecialty training in the field of gastroenterology, which is basically including digestive health and how the gut works and the stomach works, including the liver and the pancreas and other organs that are included in the digestive tract.
When did you decide to go down the integrative route? How long after you were in practice?
I think it was about 3 or so years into practice is when I started to feel that I was a little lost in what we were actually doing with patients, and I felt like there was something else missing. And to tell you the truth, I actually, there's some people I tell the story to, I actually wasn't even sure whether I was supposed to be a doctor anymore. I don't know if jaded is the right word or, but I kind of felt like I don't really know, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Am I even doing this job the right way? Because, I feel like, I'm smart. I know all the stuff in the books. I know the guidelines. I can do procedures. I can take care of people who are sick. But still, it was just a sense of dissatisfaction, and I was kind of lost and wasn't really sure whether I should remain in medicine because of that. And my wife actually was a key person who kind of really kept me motivated and introduced me to integrative medicine. She was always more integratively inclined than I was from the beginning, from when I met her, actually. And so I have to give her credit in that she kind of guided me along and gave me a few books. And begrudgingly, I looked at and read through some of them, and I became interested. And then I talked with one of my friends that I made at Johns Hopkins when I had my first job. I was no longer at Johns Hopkins at this time, and he guided me to the fellowship, and I did the fellowship in integrative medicine. And within the first week, it was like somebody just did CPR on me. It was like I had a breath of fresh air. I was excited about it again. I, was happy, and I just felt like my life was saved. I mean, it sounds kind of dramatic to say that, but it's the truth. And I think everything from there just kind of went forward, and it's never been the same, which is a good thing.
So what were some of the things that you were seeing that kind of made you make that decision?
Well, a lot of what we see in gastroenterology is a lot of abdominal pain, symptoms like constipation and diarrhea, irritable bowel type things. And the medicines are only so good. And I just felt like something was missing. The people would keep coming back, and we'd give them this medicine or that medicine, try this or try that. But they get a little bit better, but there's still a sense of dissatisfaction and overall symptom improvement. And I also had that dissatisfaction as well as a physician that, we're helping them, but it's just something is missing. That there's some part of the picture that I'm just not getting yet.
Can you give me an example of a patient where you found that was the case?
So I'll tell you, one of the first patients that I took care of after I started doing integrative medicine, just to kind of show the example of how effective it can be, is this lady. I was practicing in Florida at the time, and this lady drove across the state to see me. And before we got into much discussion, usually I say, hello, hi, how's it going? Nice to meet you type thing. And she sat down and she said, I got to tell you that you're probably the 6th or 7th gastroenterologist I've seen. I've had my problems for at least 20 years, and nobody's been able to help me. So I don't really expect too much from you, but I just thought I'd give it a try because I saw your background. So it's kind of funny, that's kind of how we started off the conversation. And basically her problem was 20 years of chronic diarrhea. Anxiety, panic attacks, agoraphobia. She was scared to leave her house, didn't really socialize much because of all of those kind of things. And I just sat down and talked with her about her life, what were some of the stressors in her life. We talked about diet, nutrition, stress reduction, sleep, toxins, a wide variety of different things. And I didn't prescribe a single medication. I actually didn't order any tests or anything because she had done a lot of these tests already. And we ended the visit, and she left. And I wondered how she was doing, in the weeks after. And she came back to see me at about the 2-3 month mark for a follow-up visit. And I was really curious. I wasn't really sure whether any change would have been made or not, because that was kind of like the standard routine for a lot of people. And when she came back, I was very pleasantly surprised because she said, I actually listened to all the things that you talked to me about. I sat down, I started making some changes, and my diarrhea is resolved. And I've only had 3 panic attacks in the last 3 months, and I was having multiple panic attacks daily. And now I'm able to exercise, I'm jogging on the beach, I'm hanging out with friends, and she was just so bubbly and happy. And she even brought me a book that she read about nutrition and was sharing with me her own smoothie recipes. So, this is just an amazing example of how such simple sounding things can make an enormous impact on somebody's life.
If this episode is leaving you wanting more, I'll be hosting a live webinar on gut health. Join me and get the opportunity to get your gut health questions answered. Go to theshiftclinic.com/webinar. See you there.
So you're a gastroenterologist, so you're working with a broad range of people, some of them that need really serious medical intervention and have some really severe things going on. What percentage of people that come to see you do you think just need to change their diet and lifestyle to get improvement?
I think a lot of people need to change their diet and lifestyle. I think even if you think that you are eating healthy, it's sometimes all relative. Myself, as a physician, before I got too much into, integrative medicine, functional medicine, and learn more about nutrition and health myself, thought I was pretty healthy. Wake up in the morning, maybe have a cup of coffee for breakfast, maybe a bagel, have a sandwich with a Diet Coke because you wouldn't have regular Coke, and maybe a bag of chips, and then have a nice dinner. I mean, that doesn't sound too bad, right? There's no cheeseburgers from McDonald's in there or anything like that. But that's actually not very healthy at all. And that was probably a good version. You should see, some of my other colleagues around that same time and how they ate. And when I made these changes in myself, almost within the first few weeks, just kind of cutting out a lot of what sounds to be obvious things now, I lost 10 pounds almost immediately. And over the subsequent 3-4 months, I lost another 30 pounds. So it happens very quickly once you start giving the body what it needs. So what I tell people is, if you give your body the ingredients that it needs to do the job that it wants to do, that it was born to do, it will do the very best that it can under those circumstances.
Tell me more about the microbiome and its role in not just digestion, but kind of total health. And what I kind of want to have a conversation around is, I guess it's this area where we're only just really starting to know the implications of different medications and different things that we've done over the years on the microbiome. So where do you see that we're sitting now with that?
I think this is a very rapidly evolving field. It's one of the most exciting fields in science now. And I recently wrote a book chapter in the new edition of Integrative Gastroenterology, which I'm one of the co-editors for, and it's about lifestyle medicine and the microbiome. And in that process, I reviewed hundreds of articles, and there was science to support that the microbiome plays a role obviously in diet and digestion, nutrition, but also in sleep, also is affected by stress, also affected by toxins, and plays a role in the detoxification process, and even plays a role in social interconnectedness and love. I mean, this stuff is fascinating. I mean, there's a particular kind of bacteria that exists that can actually increase blood levels of oxytocin. That is crazy to me. I mean, so, we're going to see, that the gut microbiome is really one of the most important parts of our human body.
Can you tell me a little bit about a food intolerance reaction versus a reaction that's coming from bacterial fermentation?
Food reactions can manifest in a wide variety of manners. Sometimes this doesn't happen immediately. There's different kinds of food reactions. Everybody knows about, for example, I guess peanuts is a good one to talk about because everyone's real familiar with peanuts and getting problems with they can't breathe or tongue, lip swelling, things like that. That's more of what we call an IgE-mediated response, which is an anaphylactic type response, an immediate response. If you eat the peanuts, sometimes even if you touch the peanuts, you get this kind of severe immune reaction. What we're kind of talking about here is more of a delayed reaction. Sometimes people can have symptoms even a couple days after eating a food. So, for example, if I had a piece of bread in the morning, maybe I'll have something as simple as heartburn later in the day, or my joints start aching the next day, or I get a headache. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have celiac disease. Celiac disease is an autoimmune immune condition, but you may have immune reactivity or non-celiac gluten sensitivity is what the actual term is in the case of gluten. So actually one of the things I do when I'm trying to tease this out without actually doing any kind of testing, and actually the very best test is what comes out of the patient's mouth, because we have tests we can check for food sensitivities. It's not a perfect science by any means, but a lot of us use it as a guide because it's better than not having any test. But the best test is actually a food diary. If you can actually get the patient to do a food diary, keep track of at least for 2 weeks type time period and write down, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, everything that you're eating, and have a slot for the symptoms that you're experiencing, and try to see if you can build a correlation over a few week time period. So, if somebody has headaches and it's always the day after they had eggs for breakfast, then, hey, there may be something to that. That may be something we want to target to avoid.
Absolutely. And I think it's like there's heaps of different tests you can do and they cost a lot of money, but the first place people need to look at is that self-observation and just slowing down and getting out of their head and back in their body and really thinking, well, what is actually going on for me here? Yeah. Can you tell me, what are some of the symptoms that people would need to be worried that they definitely need to get medically investigated?
There are definitely some warning signs that you want to be aware of. If you're having a lot of weight loss or throwing up, you can't eat, severe stomach pain, especially if the pain wakes you up from your sleep, that's always kind of a red flag. Your doctor should be asking you about the pain and then asking you if it wakes you up in your sleep, because, when people have irritable bowel spasm pain, you're usually not waking up from your sleep with that. But if you have something like a pancreatic cancer, you may wake up with, pain in the middle of the night. Blood in the stools or change in your bowel habit, difficulty swallowing, pain with swallowing, wide variety of things like that, fever. These are things that you really ought to make sure you get investigated to make sure that there's nothing going on.
What's your take on reflux and hyperchlorhydria?
So reflux is a big topic of discussion, especially patients come see me in the office, because we're also used to taking these antacids, at the drop of a hat. They're over the counter here. I don't know about in Australia, but here you can go even get, 3 different proton pump inhibitors over the counter, in addition to, H2 blockers and Tums and things like that. You don't even need a doctor's prescription for it anymore. You can just walk in the CVS and Walgreens or your grocery store and buy it without needing any advice, because it's just become commonplace here. And so as a result, I find that we all know that these medicines reduce the acidity in the stomach, and we weren't born to not have any acid in the stomach. That's how our bodies were made, to have acid, because we need that acid to help us digest the food. And so if you have less acid, you're not able to process the food that you're eating as well. And as a result, you may have more reflux, actually, because the food is just undigested. The funny thing that I also wanted to mention is that acid reflux, there was a paper, I remember a year or so ago, that was published talking about acid reflux really not being related to acid itself, refluxing into the esophagus. But acid reflux is just, you could consider as just being a term to describe this burning sensation under your chest. And this paper was specifically talking about particular kinds of foods that are inciting an inflammatory reaction in the esophagus, giving you that feeling. And I am a bit of a believer that, certain foods can cause these feelings. And we often talk about these, big foods like coffee and chocolate and peppermint and all these things that can give you these heartburn symptoms. And yes, they have been associated with reflux, but I don't think the literature is that robust or strong to definitively say that one way or the other, even that these big foods like, citrus-based foods and tomato-based foods are actually a cause of acid reflux or heartburn. Yet somehow we accept that as commonplace.
What I loved was something you said, which is, I've actually never heard a doctor say before, is stomach acid is really, really important.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like the stomach is And even what we're seeing now, I don't know if it's like that here, but in Australia, we have a lot of bariatric weight loss surgery. So it was the lap band originally, but now people are getting gastric sleeves, which if you're not aware of that, it's where people literally get their stomach cut off for weight loss. What is the consequence of losing the stomach for the body?
Well, it's funny because I think there's some literature showing how the gut microbiome actually shifts and changes when these surgeries are done. So it really leads you to wonder what is actually causing the weight loss. Is it the anatomical change? Probably there's because you're limiting the amount of food that you can eat at a particular time, but also because something happens in the gut microbiome that changes, and we know that the microbiome can drive our metabolism and our weight. And as a gastroenterologist, we often say we're a little biased because we always see the complications of these things. We don't often see the positive outcomes because people come see us afterwards when they have a problem. But a lot of the things that we see these days is that people will lose the weight and then the weight starts coming back. And that's because they find other ways to get their cravings. If they can't eat the Snickers bar, they'll eat the gummy bears because they're a lot smaller. But ultimately, it's just another excuse to not make the lifestyle changes that you may need to get in the right direction. And don't get me wrong, I'm not totally opposed to these kind of surgeries. Some people are really sick and they don't have months or years to, make these lifestyle changes in order to save their life from having complications of, obesity. But what's important is that even if you get these surgeries, to really learn what some of the principles are of how to maintain the benefit that you've gained from that change in the surgery.
Tell me about inflammatory bowel disease.
So inflammatory bowel disease, there are generally two categories that we often think about. Ulcerative colitis is one, and that's mainly involving the colon, and Crohn's disease is the other, and that can involve the entire GI tract from the mouth all the way to the end and anywhere in between. Ulcerative colitis is usually something that is continuous and starts from the bottom, which is your rectum, and kind of goes upwards. Crohn's disease can happen anywhere, and it can be hodgepodgey. It can be a little bit here, a little bit there, do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that. So it's a little bit of a different condition, but both of them, you can kind of think of them as autoimmune conditions where your body, your immune system is attacking the gut. And as a result, you get ulcers, you get stricturing, you get fistulas that can develop, abscesses, and things like that. And when the colon gets inflamed, you can get bleeding. Colitis is basically a generic term. It just means inflammation of the colon. People can get colitis from a lot of different kinds of things, infections and, low blood flow to the colon, medications. But when we say ulcerative colitis, we're really kind of referring to the ulcerations that occur in the colon as a result of this autoimmunity.
What causes it?
That's a great question. I think there's no straightforward answer. It's these conditions are kind of lumped together under the heading of idiopathic conditions, which basically means we don't really know exactly, but it's due to a combination of factors. There may be a genetic predisposition. There's an environmental aspect to it. There's a gut microbiome aspect to it. And so I think all of these things in combination can be contributory.
What are some of the themes that you're noticing people are coming to see you for at the moment?
For me, I'm a little bit of a different bird here, but so I see patients that have a wide variety of concerns, whether it's related to autoimmune disease, from fibromyalgia. People come to me for chronic fatigue, for migraines, for gastrointestinal issues, some of the symptoms we talked about, like heartburn, bloating, SIBO, irritable bowel. And then, I have a fair amount of people that just want to be well, generally may have a couple of little symptoms here and there, but generally kind of feel like they're okay, but really kind of want to know what they need to do to kind of know their body, get control of their health, and live in a certain way that can kind of keep things ideal or optimal. And those are the people that, I work with on that and doing some of these kind of special tests, which can help them figure that out.
What conditions is gut health related to?
Oh, the list is growing almost every day. The gut microbiome and imbalances in the gut microbiome have been associated with myriad amount of conditions, from Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, obesity, autism, allergies, eczema, colon polyps, multiple sclerosis, metabolic syndrome, diabetes. I usually have a slide on this in presentations that I give, and it's actually not one slide. It's 3 slides of just listing the conditions. So it's not subtle. It's not just 1 or 2 things. So, it's definitely a key player in overall health. And I think we're going to be seeing more and more of that, and how we can, modulate or change, impact the gut microbiome to kind of help cooperate in reducing symptoms and hopefully even preventing some of these problems in the future. We're not there yet, but I think that's the direction we're going.
What do you think people should do to improve their digestive health generally?
So I love that question, because I actually have I give a whole lecture on this sometimes. So digestive health to me is the same thing as whole health, which is the same thing as DNA health. That's one of the things I usually tell people. And that means that, if you want to optimize your health, your longevity, how long you live, how well you are, it's all the same to me, because all of these same things that we talk about for, your DNA health, your brain health, your longevity is the same thing we do for digestive health. If we, look at what kind of foods we're eating, help make our diet better, free from processed packaged foods, fast foods, and sugar, especially inflammatory fats and oils. If we, adjust our diet, if we exercise or move more, we sleep the right amount, we have fun, make sure you laugh, make sure you enjoy yourself, you're out in nature, you're reducing your stress or learning techniques about how to reduce your stress with meditation, mindfulness, things like that. And these are some of the key things that you can do to kind of optimize your gut health, because what you're doing is basically looking at some of the main categories of things that can affect your gut microbiome.
Want to look deeper into your own health? Our virtual naturopathic team help people from all over the world to shift their health and their life. We offer a 90-minute online discovery and diagnostic session where you can find out where you're at, why you're here, and what you need to do about it. Everyone is so unique, and sometimes it can help to have someone break down your journey and see where it is that you need to head next. To find out more, go to theshiftclinic.com and click on Shift with Us.
Tell me a little bit about the development of a child's digestive tract.
That's a good question. So we often think of, the gut microbiome when we're thinking about development of the child's digestive tract. The funny thing is that your adult microbiome that you have today has pretty much been formed by the age 2.5 to 3 years or so, meaning that, when you're 4 years old, the microbiome that you had then at age 4 is the same microbiome that you have now at 40 years old. Essentially, the keystone species, the big colonizers, the guys who came and planted their flags in your gut microbiome, they pretty much settled in. And, after about that early age, they're there to stay, and the environment or ecosystem kind of develops around that. And we talk about introducing new bacteria and taking probiotics and prebiotics and eating fermented foods to increase the diversity and things like that. But I think the main concept is that the primary guys, the colonizers, the guys who, established the ecosystem, they're there. And what happens, I believe, over time is that, there may be shifts in populations. Some may go up, some may go down. But what really is important when we're talking about affecting health is, is the actions of those bacteria. And as we get older and we're exposed to different things and we eat different ways and we experience different stressors, that microbiome that you have as a child may still be there, but the actions of those bacteria may shift and change. They learn, they adapt, they exchange genetic material with each other, they can take on new functions. It's really fascinating. But the point about the developing child is that really what's important is that parents should really be more aware of how their own health is before the kid is even born. And it's that environmental aspect there. Maybe this is where nurture versus nature, kind of comes into play. What their own health is like, what they're eating, what stressors they experience before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and after delivery, and what home environment the kid is brought up in.
What are you passionate about right now?
I am passionate about helping people understand what their body is made up of and understanding what are the steps and processes you need to take to regain control of your life and your health. I think, and I experienced this myself in my own life. It's just like when you feel like you're not doing well, you're overweight, you have some problems, and, the doctor says, if you don't lose 20 pounds, you're going to get diabetes and have a heart attack by the time you're 40. All that really does is freak you out. It doesn't really accomplish anything for you. You may go on a crash diet and go exercise so hard you strain a muscle, just as a reaction to that, but that doesn't get you anywhere in the long run of things. So what I really want to do, what I'm passionate about, is really kind of trying to bring it back to basics, simplify the process, don't make it seem so complicated, and really listen to what people are trying to tell me about their lives and helping them understand in their lives, because everybody's life is different, their environment's different, their circumstances is different. You can't make it, one generic recommendation for everyone on the planet. To take everything they say in their context of their life and really try to help guide them through the process of wellness and what needs to happen in order for that to be accomplished. Because it's not about a diet, it's not about a wellness program, it's about your life. And so I tell people that, we use the word diet just because it's a word that kind of communicates how you eat. But the word diet is really kind of a bad word, because the word diet really implies that it's something that you're doing, perhaps even for a fixed period of time to accomplish something in a fixed period of time. But really, that's just not how you should live your life, because your life lasts your lifetime, and you should be eating in a way that can last you your lifetime.
So this program's called The Shift, and the reason that I called it The Shift is because when people need to make a change, they need to make a shift in mindset, habits, in something. And this could go through to health or also through other areas of your life, whenever we're kind of moving and shifting from one version of ourselves to the next. Mm-hmm. Can you think about a time in your life where there's been a really big shift?
Well, there are a lot of major events that occur in someone's life that leads them to have major shifts. I mean, one of the first shifts I had was in leaving my home state, because then I was on my own, learning how to be an adult without, parents necessarily there. And then the next best and the next big shift was when I met my wife, then another shift is when we had our first kid, and then our second kid. And then I guess professionally, the big shift I had is, in the story that I told earlier, is when I realized, that I needed to make a change in how I practice medicine, and to actually be more of a healer than a doctor necessarily. And made a big shift in how I looked at what being a healer and a doctor really meant, and how I took care of patients. And that's probably the latest big shift that I had, professionally, career-wise. And now I guess I'm in the middle of another big shift, and that's in taking all of this information and bringing it to the world as one of the thought leaders in integrative gastroenterology. We're always shifting. Your genes are shifting, your microbes are shifting, everything is shifting. So the body was meant to shift.
Definitely. What would be your definition of a healer?
So a healer doesn't necessarily have to be a doctor. So a healer is someone who can help another identify where they may have certain problems or deficiencies or pains or whatever, and identify where those problems may be coming from and help guide them through the process of getting rid of that problem and perhaps preventing that problem from occurring in the future, and to help keep you in that improved steady state. So it could be, your priest could be a healer, your best friend could be a healer, your doctor could be your healer, your naturopath could be your healer, your child could be your healer. Actually, children are probably the best healers. We don't look at them like that, but a child is the purest form of human being, their mentality and their reactions and how they respond to things. And there's a lot to learn. I mean, even though I say this myself, I still make the same mistakes over and over again, but they keep teaching us over and over again. So they won't stop. Some may call it annoying, but it's actually education. You have to look at it that way. It won't be annoying if you actually learned the lesson the first time.
I've got a 6-year-old as well, so I hear you. I totally hear you. That's really awesome. Can you tell me, what's the hardest thing you've ever had to do?
Open my mind to the possibility that there was something else that I needed to do to help myself and others that was against the grain. It's really hard to be somebody alone in your field who is thinking and talking in a certain way without, necessarily being criticized about it or, worried about what other people are going to say about that, and I think you just really have to be confident that you're using evidence and knowledge and science to make certain statements or to help people in certain ways, and be confident about it. I think difficulty is all in the eye of the beholder. I read a lot of and listen to a lot of philosophy and, abstract concepts and things like that. And, we all talk about rules and society and this and that. And, there are really no rules. There's no societal laws that you must follow. You do what's best. You do what's right. You do what you feel and believe in and you're passionate about. I mean, all of the greatest things, from things as simple as the iPhone, came from people who went against the grain. And so be confident in what you feel and what you think. Don't make things up. Use science. Use evidence-based medicine and practices. But don't be afraid to talk about them and help people with them, because they can actually be useful.
If someone wants to make a shift in their health, what's the most important thing for them to do?
I think before you start making any sort of plan, it's just to stop, take a step back and look at what's going on in your life. You can kind of break it down into different categories of exercise and nutrition and stress and all that kind of stuff. And that can kind of help categorize it for you in your mind. And then the most important thing to remember when you want to make the shift is that don't make the whole shift at one time, because you can't. You're just a human being, and you can't expect yourself to go from 0 to hero in 5 minutes. It's a process. That's why it's called the lifestyle medicine. That's why it's called For Your Life. It's not, a crash diet or a crash exercise plan to lose 10 pounds before you go to this wedding so you look skinny for everybody, because that doesn't last you very long. The most important thing to remember is that it takes time. It takes time to make changes. It takes time for your body's chemistry to shift. It takes time for the microbiome to shift and what the microbiome is doing. It takes time to turn genes on and turn genes off. And that, if you do a little bit every day, or you do something different every week, then by the end of the year, you'll be a totally different person. So it's okay to spend a year to make that shift. It's okay to spend 5 years to make that shift, as long as you're making the shift.
I think that's really great advice, and that's a really good sort of endpoint. Do you have anything else that you want to share?
I guess for people out there is to try to find a practitioner, a healthcare provider that has similar philosophy and viewpoints as yourself, because what sometimes people get caught in the middle of is they feel or want something and they go to somebody and that person doesn't really even want to hear about it, and they get nowhere and they get frustrated with it. So if that's happened to you, don't necessarily get frustrated and give up. Keep trying, aligning yourself with people that can actually listen to you and understand what your problems are and take care of you in the way that you want to be taken care of is helpful. And they can also help you find other people that can continue that process of healing in many different ways, because it is a whole body experience to kind of get yourself tuned in.
Dr. Marvin Singh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I really hope that after that conversation, you can understand your digestive system and how it works better. But let's summarize some of the key points. Number 1, so many of us get food reactions. Sometimes figuring them out can be tricky because they can be a direct food intolerance or allergy, or a result of the fermentation of the bacteria of your microbiome. Sometimes multiple reactions can occur concurrently, so it can take a bit of detective work to figure it out. Number 2, reflux may not necessarily be from an overproduction of acid. The treatment is generally acid-blocking drugs like proton pump inhibitors, but these drugs can make matters worse and are not a viable long-term solution. More on proton pump inhibitors in episode 3 of The Shift. Number 3, a child's microbiome develops in their infancy and is formed by the time that they're 3 or so. This means that by the time you're 4 years old, you will have the microbiome that you will as an adult. Damage to the microbiome in early years, such as the use of antibiotics, can therefore have irreversible effects that can lead into adulthood. Number 4, before you try to make a shift, take a step back and look at what is going on in your life. Examine it, break it down, and see what you're dealing with. You don't have to deal with everything at once. As long as you systematically work through the issues, you'll eventually make the shift. There were so many amazing insights and advice shared by Dr. Marvin in this episode. Here's some action steps you could consider taking as a result of listening. Number 1, keep a food and symptom diary to see if you can work out food reactions. They may not happen every time, so it can take a few weeks of monitoring to pick up on patterns. If you need further help, you can then take this in to see your naturopath, nutritionist, or functional medical doctor to help you. Number 2, don't ignore your digestive symptoms. Not only are they bothersome, they can be signs that you're likely to develop other conditions as a result of this down the line. Get help so that you can change your lifestyle and get treatment if you need it. If you're considering seeing a naturopath, you can get a complimentary 15-minute new patient assessment with one of our Shift team by visiting theshiftclinic.com and clicking on Shift with us. Number 3, the first few years of life is a critical window to develop and build a robust microbiome. If you're thinking of becoming pregnant, are currently pregnant, or are breastfeeding, it's a really good time for you to be focusing on gut health and nourishing your microbiome. Cut back on sugar, wheat, and processed food, and really up your fibre, fruit, veggies, and probiotic foods in the diet. I really enjoyed my conversation with Dr. Marvin, and I hope that you did too. You can connect with Marvin on social media or visit his website drmarvinsingh.com. That's drmarvinsingh.com, where you can access his free ebook on gut health. All links will be available in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please do let us know by leaving a review or posting and tagging myself, Katherine Maslen, and Dr. Marvin Singh on social media so that we can say hello. In the next episode of The Shift, you'll meet the wonderful Summer Bock, a specialist in the art of fermentation and using functional foods for health. See you soon.
Coming up on The Shift.
What is fermentation?
Fermentation is scientifically, it's a form of respiration, essentially.
Do you think that people are starting to wake up to the fact that antibiotics are bad?
I do. I see evidence of that all the time.
Tell me about your personal healing journey.
It's interesting because I didn't really know that I had any health issues at all.
By now, you might be beginning to wonder what the health of your gut is like. To find out more, take our free online assessment at theshiftclinic.com/quiz. It only takes 5 minutes and you'll get a great report with some suggestions to get you started.
The Shift!